I don't even understand this thing anymore. Because now, apparently, my OBS just resetted back to what it was before that weird-ass thing that happened, like, on Monday. I don't even know what the heck that was. Monday and Wednesday streams were just bonkers because OBS, like, completely overhauled itself. And then, like, a lot of things were just, like, not working properly, and this OBS would just be stupid, like, oh, you gotta sign in every single time, or whatever. I was like, it never did this before for, like, the last 2 years. I don't even know what's going on, but I opened OBS today, and it was just, like, before, so, like, I don't even know. I don't even know what to tell you. Anyways, hello and welcome to the Streaming Parson reads Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. I really gotta do something about, like, having the gap thing just exposed here, because this isn't, like, I don't want to get in trouble for, like, having, like, brand names show up on my videos like that, and this is not, like, this video's not, like, a sponsored video or anything. There you go. Anyway, originally, I was actually going to try and power through and read the rest of this book. But one, I don't know, I'm just quite not in the mood for it. I don't think I have the endurance to power through the last couple of tales. Because if I were to do that, it would be like 3 tales and then the epilogue. But I think we'll figure out some way to pad out next week's Canterbury Tales video. And that would be, of course, the last one, because we're basically at the end of this book. But today's plan, we're going to read through 2 more tales. We're going to read through the Nun's second tale, and then we'll read through the Yeoman's tale. And that'll be the plan for today. So, should be a roughly just shy of 2-hour stream, because it'll take that long to go through both of these tales. See, I was originally thinking, like, oh, just go full, like, 3 hours and just power through. But I don't think I have the stamina in me today. So, that's the plan for today. So let's just dive into it. We're going to begin with the Second Nun's tale. Now, what's interesting about this is that, okay, so I guess I should have mentioned this earlier. Obviously, when you only have a book this big, you're only going to have so many tales in it. Because this isn't like the Decameron or something. The Decameron is another book. There's no way I would subjugate you guys to going through the Decameron with me. But basically, in the Decameron has like hundreds of stories in it, hundreds of short stories in it. Because of course, similar to the Canterbury Tales, there's kind of like a game going on where a bunch of people have to tell like a bunch of stories. And in the Decameron, most of, if not almost all the stories that are told in this like game are recorded. Whereas in the Canterbury Tales, actually a lot of them are not recorded. Not officially anyway. And of course, like, different authors will have different... Some of them will have like additional material. Whereas in the David Wright version that I have here, the David Wright version actually omits quite a bit. But of course, at the same time, like, you know how many streams we've already done, and this is like a watered down version of the Canterbury Tales, whereas if you probably picked up one of the other versions that have a couple extra tales, that would be like another 100 pages. And that's already a lot, because this book is 300 pages, and so just imagine like going through a 400-page book like that. I wouldn't subjugate you guys to going that long with me in one go. I mean, okay, I know somebody might say like my Bible reading streams are kind of super long like that. Like, how long was the Book of Samuel series? But of course, the way I did those streams was very different from how we're doing this one. So, TLDR, we're near the end of this book, and we're not going to... Like, I'm going to pad out a little bit of next week's stream, but I think in the grand scheme of things, that we're not going to go too much longer, because I think we've had quite our fill of the Canterbury Tales. And that's fine that the David Wright version of the book, which I have, omits quite a few stories. Because remember, in the introduction, I think the host's game that he poses to all the travelers is that everyone has to tell essentially 4 stories. They go 2 on the way there and 2 on the way back. Of course, when you have like 40 people, that's like 100. How many stories would that be? Like 160 stories? Yeah, we don't have enough space for 160 stories. Although the Decameron is like, I think the Decameron is like 100 stories or something like that. And so it's, yeah, I think the Decameron is 100 stories, and so all 100 stories are basically recorded in it. And then if you were to read like the Arabian Nights, which I have like a version of it, I have a version of like the first 300 stories, and that thing is like 300 stories, right? And that thing is massive. It's like, maybe I'll show it off. Like I'm not gonna read it to you guys. No way I'd be able to subjugate you guys to that, and no way we'd be able to, like, if I were to actually do like a reading series of like the Arabian Nights, that'd be like a 10-year project, which I don't plan on doing. I know imagine still being here in 10 years, but like that would be like a 10-year project just to do like a 1001 Arabian Nights. I mean, hell, what would be hilarious if I was actually paid to do this, and what I would do is if I were ever to like entertain like doing the Arabian Nights, it'd be like we will do like 1001 consecutive streams, and then do like all 1001 stories. But that maybe there'll be a YouTuber out there that will actually do that, because no way in hell that person is gonna be me. I'll tell you that much. But anyway, weird sidetrack. But back to the Canterbury Tales. What's interesting is, out of the limited text that is preserved, for some reason only the nun gets to go twice. Everyone else, we don't even get a single story from every single person. And that's traveling in this group, because remember, there's 40 people. But we've only read like 26 stories, and yes, I counted. We've only gone through 20 some odd stories. I think it's 20. No, we haven't gone all 26 yet. There are 26 total, but we haven't done all 26 of them. So that's not even enough for everybody to go once. And so, I mean, there's a lot of stories that we just don't get. And that's just how it is. Because once again, like if we were to do all 160 stories, as would have been the requirement of the host's game, I mean, this book, which only has 26 stories in it, we'd have to like what? Increase this book by like 5 times. Yeah, I don't see that happening. Yeah, right, Tosi Alir? Damn, 160 stories. And once again, this is pretty tame, because the Decameron is 100 like longer stories. Arabian Nights is 1001 stories. Hell, I'll show it to you guys now just because we're talking about it. I'll be right back. Let me grab my first 300 stories of Arabian Nights. It's not even all 1,000 of them. Okay, so I couldn't find. I have an idea where it is, but I'm not gonna dig through the whole thing now. I don't. We haven't even read the book. We're not even reading Canterbury Tales yet, and we're already like 15 minutes in. So I don't want to waste too much more time than I already have. But what I have here, this is the Decameron. The Decameron is roughly 100 stories, and about all 100 of them are actually recorded in here. And so, this is the Decameron. Look how massive this thing is. Look how tiny the font is in this book. Yeah. There's no way I would subjugate you guys to that. That would just be pain. Unless, like, you know, if I was doing this, like, full-time, paid, then maybe I'd do the Decameron, but let's be real, that's not happening. I don't think I have the mental fortitude. So I wouldn't expect that of other people. If I don't have the mental fortitude to do it, I don't expect anyone to, like, go along with me to try and go through the Decameron. That's how long that book is. But yeah, like the Canterbury Tales, like in comparison, like the Canterbury Tales would actually be longer if we had like all 160 stories, which we don't. But your eyes are just by looking at it. Yeah. Understandable. Most people would be like, "Oh my god, really?" And once again, like I have my Arabian Nights is somewhere. I don't even have the full thing. I have the first 300 stories because I took it for a university course years ago. Just like we read some of the stories. Yeah, no way you'd be able to do all like 300 stories in a semester, let alone like your entire degree. I mean, hell, that's something like a 10-year doctorate actually. And there are people who've done like studies, like doctorate studies on the Arabian Nights. And the Arabian Nights is just like even more absurd. But out of like the travelers here, okay, let's get back to the Canterbury Tales here. Among the travelers here, for some reason, only the nun gets multiple. The nun priest, anyways, the person who like leads a bunch of nuns. He's the only person, to my knowledge, that has 2 stories actually in the Canterbury Tales. No one else has 2 stories. I mean, a lot of the, like, almost half the travelers don't even have 1 story that's recorded. Let alone, like, more than 1. And here's the nun priest just hogging the spotlight here with 2 stories. Which is where we're going to begin today's stream. The Second Nun's Prologue. We should do all that is in our power to eschew that nurse and servant of the vices, portress at the gate of pleasure, whose English name is idleness. We should beat her down with her opposite, that's to say, lawful industry, lest the devil get hold of us through our indolence. I totally pronounced that wrong the first time. Our indolence. For once he sees an idle man, he who is continuously watching to entrap us with his 1,000 subtle snares, can so quickly snap up in his net that the man doesn't know he's in the grip of the fiend till he's fairly caught by the lapel. We should work earnestly, thus resisting idleness. For every thought we only take this present life into consideration. It painfully stands to reason that idleness is a rotten torpidity from which nothing good or profitable ever comes. That sloth holds idleness in a leash is only to sleep and eat and drink and devour the product of others' labor. To put from us the sort of idleness that the cause of so much calamity. I have here done my faithful endeavor in translating from the Legenda Aurea, thy glorious life and passion, O thou whose garland is woven of the lily and rose. It is thee, I mean, virgin and martyr, Saint Cecilia. The invocation to the Virgin Mary. Oh my god, why we gotta do like fancy old school talk here? Alright, here's my attempt at Middle English. Well, what the hell do I even call this? It's like a attempt to emulate Middle English using modern romanization of letters. Here I go. Thou that art flower of all virgins, thou of whom Saint Bernard so loved to writ, thee I first invoke ye at my beginnings. Enable me to celebrate, O thou who comfortest us miserable sinners, thy death of thy maiden, who through her merit won eternal life and victory over thy fiend, as in her story may hereafter be read. Thou maiden mother, daughter of thy Son, thou fount of mercy, balm of sinful souls, in whom's God in his goodness choose to dwell, lowly yet exalted above all creatures. Thou didst ennoble our nature to such a degree that the Maker did not disdain to clothe and bind his Son in flesh and blood of human nature. Within the blessed cloister of thy womb, the eternal love and peace of the threefold world of Lord and Guide, whom earth and sea and heaven praise forever without cease, took man's shape, and thou, unspotted virgin, born of thy body, the creator of all creatures, yet restraineth thy maiden purity. Oh my god, this thing keeps going. I'm doing my best here with this semi-Middle English speak. In thee magnificence united with mercy, goodness, and so much more of compassion, that thou, who art the Son of excellence, dost not only help those who pray to thee, but even before men beseech thy help dost often, of thy benignity, freely anticipate their prayers and become the physician of their lives. Don't worry, I can't pronounce things as well. I mean, you try to read this shit, man. It ain't easy. And you know, the crazy part is that, like, this is how people used to talk. I mean, as much as people give William Shakespeare crap, we gotta thank William Shakespeare for basically giving the footpads of modern English, because a little bit of funny trivia, the reason why Shakespeare wrote the way he did was because he hated talking like this. He's like, this is dumb. I'm gonna change the way English works. And then made up a whole bunch of new words. And changed, like, certain parts of English grammar so that what we constitute as modern English could exist. You know, thank God for William Shakespeare and changing the English language, because I don't think if we were still speaking like this today, it'd be hella weird. Like, I could not imagine my life speaking this way. Alright, continuing on. In thee is okay. In the I might as well restart this part. In thee is magnificence, united with mercy, goodness, and so much of compassion, that thou, who art the Son of excellence, dost not only help those who pray to thee, but even before men beseech thy help dost often, of thy benignity, freely anticipate their prayers, and become the physician of their lives. O fair Virgin, meek and blessed, helps me now, a banished exile in this desert of bitterness. Remember the woman of Canaan who said, the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. And though I, unworthy son of Eve, be sinful, yet accept my faith. And because faith without works is dead, give me the wit and opportunity so to work, that I may escape from the most dark region. O thou who art so fair and highly favored, Mother of Christ, dear daughter of Saint Anne, be my advocate in that high place where Hosanna is sung without end. Illuminine with thy light and my imprisoned soul, troubled by the contagion of my body and by the weight of earthly lusts and false affections. O haven of refuge, O salvation of those in sorrow and distress, help me now, for I am about to begin my task. Nevertheless, I pray you who read what I write to forgive me if I take no pains to ornament the story, for I am presenting the words and sense of one who wrote it in reverence of the saint. I merely follow the account of her life and beg you to improve upon my work, where necessary. Oh, thank God, that part's over. The interpretation of the name of Cecilia. First, I'd like to expound the etymology of the name of Saint Cecilia in the light of her history. In English, it means heaven's lily, Cole Lilia, signifying the pure chasteness the pure chasteness of virginity. Or perhaps she was called Lily, since she had the whiteness of honor, and green of conscience, and the sweet savor of good fame. Alternatively, Cecilia is as much as to say a path for the blind, or sacis via, because of the examples she set by her teaching. Or again, as I have read, Cecilia is made up of a kind of compound of heaven, Colam, and Leah. Here, figuratively, heaven signifies her holy contemplation, and Leah, her ceaseless activity. Cecilia can also be interpreted in the following manner. Wanting in blindness, Caesitete carines, because of the great light of her wisdom and her shining virtues. Or, yet again, this radiant virgin's name comes from heaven, Colem, and Leos, for she may well be called, and quite rightly, a heaven to people. Leos is a word for, like, the people. That's where we get the word layman. An exemplar of all wise and good deeds, for Leos means the people in English. And just as in the heavens, one sets the sun and moon and all of the stars, so in the spiritual sense, one sees in this noble virgin the magnanimity of faith, the perfect clarity of wisdom, and many bright and excellent works. The learned have written that the heavenly spheres are swift and round, and burning. Even so was the white and lovely Cecilia, ever swift and diligent in good works. In good works, round and entire in her perseverance. That's a weird way of wording that. Ever burning with the radiant flame of charity. I have now explained her name. Now the tale actually begins. According to her life, the fair virgin Cecilia was born of a noble Roman family, and brought up from her cradle in the faith of Christ, whose gospel was never absent from her thoughts. So I guess we could surmise that Saint Cecilia is born sometime, I guess, just like somewhere between like 400 AD and let's say 800 AD. I mean, sure, the Byzantine Empire was still a thing like a little while longer than that, like into the Crusade times. But of course, Byzantium was kind of like in great decline, roughly 800 AD. So we'll say Cecilia was sometime before that event the great decline of Byzantium in roughly just past 800 AD. And we'll say, since the story is painting her out to be like in the Christian cradle, so that's a fancy way of saying born in a Christian family. That would be after 400, like after 325 AD for sure, which would be when Constantine made Christianity the official religion of Rome. And so, once again, Italy would have been like, Italy still maintained like itself well after 800 AD, but once again there was like quite a bit of a fall of affluence, let's just say, roughly 800 AD for the quote-unquote Christian Roman Empire. This is actually why there was that huge expansion, which led to like the Franks and the Saxons, and a much larger need of Christianizing the outside world, because as the Christian empires, the Roman Christian Empire was in great decline, the expansion was kind of like a necessary survival tactic, if you will. That's why the Crusades operated as they did in the 10th century. Because of course the Holy Roman Empire was in great decline, and so they wanted the Holy Roman Empire wanted a way to reestablish itself. They somewhat managed to succeed, because of course, once again, as Christianity expanded into Europe, even though like Rome, the Roman part of it was kind of in great decline and even collapsed at some points, the expansion of Christianity as like a sovereign state, that was still a thing well into 14th, 15th century, just before, of course, the decline of the Christian empires, if you will. The decline of that led to all these other places like England and France to redefine themselves, and of course through that came the Renaissance and the rest, the Enlightenment, and the rest is history. So back with Saint Cecilia, we'll just give her the ballpark, because once again, no one's actually sure when she was alive. She is probably a real person, but no one's totally sure when she was alive. Some scholars would say roughly like 580. Safe enough assumption. I'm going to accept that as fact. No one actually knows though, because nobody actually wrote this shit down anyway. So you can't even be sure. Well, the issue is that once again, nobody actually wrote this stuff down. This is one reason why we treat like that time period as the Dark Ages, because this is where like literacy went down quite a bit during the second half of the first millennium AD. I know that's a weird way of wording it, but basically I'm covering like the 500 years of roughly 500 AD to 1000 AD, and literacy like was very low compared to, well, quite a bit before it. You think of like, once again, first century Israel, high literacy, and the Christians leverage that in the first century, and especially in the second century, the Christians really leveraged the high literacy rate of the well, I mean, you can't even call it the ancient world anymore, but basically pre-Dark Ages, when literacy was still very high, the Christians in the first and second century, more in the early second century, they really leveraged that, and that's where like there was a lot of like documents about like Jesus Christ and his actions and stuff like that. And this is why, like, if you look at historians, any historian of antiquity, they use Jesus Christ as like the litmus of how you test historical people in general, because of course all these documents of Jesus being written was within like 60 years of his supposed death, roughly 30 AD. And so this is like late first century, and then of course this bleeds into the second century as well. Early second century, there were tons and tons of documents, and the Christians doing this, if you were to be like in one of those tinfoil hat time, but like even for people who want to deny the existence of Jesus, they would run into the issue of like, well, why would all these Christians be so adamant of like maintaining records of not just the existence of Jesus, but the Acts of the Apostles? Because actually, contrary to popular belief, any scholar of antiquity would tell you that the Acts of the Apostles is the most recorded historical documents of like Pope Peter and St. Paul and these guys. They were the most written people in history. Because this is where like I talk about like Christians leveraging in the second century. So the early second century, so we're talking like 100 to about 130 AD. people were continuously writing about people like Saint Peter and Saint Paul and the Acts of the Apostles. Isn't it confirmed that people believe that there in fact was a Jesus? Yes, because once again, if you'd have to be incredibly stupid to make the claim that he didn't exist. And this is even for like, even people that don't believe in like Christianity, they would still acknowledge that like, well, okay, we'll accept that Jesus was a real person, because once again, no scholar of antiquity would ever deny that. Like, to deny that Jesus existed, you would have to deny like almost every single historical person. That eliminates like tons of other religious figureheads like Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. You'd have to deny his existence, because the issue is that, okay, so actually I had a funny talk with some of my cousin, my sister and my cousin. We were talking about a TV show called American Born Chinese, and they were talking about the Guanyin. So for those of you who don't know what the Guanyin is, the Guanyin is basically how do I explain this well? So the Guanyin is a later invention in Buddhism that takes traditions of various fertility goddesses in starting with India, because that's where Buddhism began, and then it adopted other like culture versions of the fertility goddesses. So you have like Chinese Guanyin and Korean and Japanese Guanyin, and then they all kind of get amalgamated into the figurehead of Guanyin. And so what many people forget is that, I don't know why okay, anyway, about the Guanyin thing, right? So Buddhism came about in roughly 200-ish BC, the earliest forms of Buddhism. Of course, the concept of the Guanyin was a much later invention, because of course in Buddhism had several schools of thought. So the very earliest ones, this is roughly 200 BC, we have something called Theravada Buddhism. And Theravada Buddhism is very like anti-religious. The whole point of Buddhism, when the Buddha started it, was a huge rejection of Indian religion. Siddhartha was very anti-Hindu. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's the TLDR. He basically was in huge denial and denouncement of all the Hindu traditions that he had grown up with. But somewhere, no one is totally sure how this happened, but roughly in 200 AD, so 400 years later, Buddhism adapted a spiritual element again into its belief system, which is kind of hilariously ironic that when Buddhism was first founded, roughly 200 BC, 400 years later, it had changed quite a lot to reincorporate spiritual elements and, acknowledging gods and stuff like that again. And this is where like the Guanyin comes in and stuff like that. But the reason why I bring this up is because with that kind of time gap, there are large time gaps between like evolutions, if you will, of like what we constitute as religious thought. And the reason why that happened was because there were huge gaps even before Theravada Buddhism was established. There were actually huge gaps between when Siddhartha Gautama actually did his first teachings. Because most historical documents, and once again, this is like shifty at best, because even like a lot of Indian scholars don't agree on this. The earliest documents of the Buddha existed roughly like a few years before like Buddhism was a thing. But Siddhartha himself was said to have lived roughly 300 years before that. So Siddhartha lived 500 BC. Buddhism really gained traction roughly 300 years later. Or, see, this is where it gets shifty, right? Because obviously Buddhism would have been a thing 500 BC when the Buddha started it. But it didn't become established as like an actual form of philosophy until 300 years later. And like and Buddhism actually having like a following like 300 years later. That's 300 years is a pretty long time. That's a huge time gap. But yet people still acknowledge that like Siddhartha was a real person, even though we don't have documents about him until like 300 years later. Now, the reason why I bring up the Buddha is that I'm going to put a parallel between, you know, historical records of the Buddha and historical records of Jesus. I talk way more about this in the Book of Acts. Maybe I should not be talking about this now because I should be reading the Canterbury Tales. You can go read. You can go check out my Book of Acts videos. I talk more in depth about this. But anyway, when this is why most people can like safely assume that Jesus was like he died 30 AD, was because all these documents that came out about him were all within like a relatively close time period. So the Gospels are said to be written roughly like 70 to 90 AD. So the book of the book of Luke. See, the interesting about the book of Luke, I talk way more about this in my book of Luke reading, and it's probably I use the book of Luke the most, especially when you talk about like historical academia, because it's the best one for it, honestly. Like the book of Luke would have been written not long after the book of Acts itself was written. Or sorry, the book of Acts was written a few years after the events themselves occurred. That's what I meant to say. And so that was unheard of. Most ancient documents would not have operated like that. Nobody would have written things immediately after. Well, one, literacy was not as high, and like, you know, you think of like, and this is where I know some Christians like wince a little bit when Bible scholars make this claim. But like, if you compare like the Old Testament with the New Testament and some of the writing issues of like the Old Testament, and this is where New Testament scholars always make the claim of like, well, we have, not to say that there's a canon within a canon of the Bible, but a lot of New Testament scholars made the claim that you have to rely more on the New Testament and its authenticity in its writing in order to support any claim about the Old Testament. So what they mean by that is, see, you think of like the writing of Moses, you know, like the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, and the contentious time period of when that was supposedly written by, well, the school of Moses, that's what I'm going to call it. That would have been like, see, the earliest date people give for Moses is like 1500 BC. And then the later date would be like 1200 BC. But the issue with that is like, even within that writing, in like ancient Hebrew scholars would talk about how those documents were written well later. The documents about Moses would have been written a lot later, and they were not as well preserved as people would have liked. Of course, there's the other whole thing about one of the bigger problems of the ancient world is that most things are told like oral stories. But that's why the Bible made sure to cover its own tracks, if you will, by having the Book of Chronicles. That's the whole purpose of the Book of Chronicles. Is basically, the Book of Chronicles was a later writing by Jewish historians in roughly 500 BC? 500 BC. So a couple centuries after, supposedly, the book of Ezra and Nehemiah take place. And so the whole point of the Book of Chronicles, and then of course Chronicles is used as a reference for how the rest of the Old Testament is written, actually. And there's an interesting whole thing about like how you should understand the entirety of the Old Testament in line with how the Book of Chronicles is designed to preserve the basic facts that cover the narrative of the Old Testament. So, TLDR, the Book of Chronicles is your fact checker as you read through the narrative of the Old Testament. Yeah, sure, do what you have to do. But basically, and Chronicles was written like obviously it's way after the fact, because how could they possibly write about Moses who lived almost 1,000 years beforehand? But The Book of Chronicles was like a compilation of like oral tradition. See, in the New Testament, it was not like this. By the time we got to the New Testament, it was not like this. They made the New Testament writers, and I guess you could say, credit to the early Christians. They thought this shit through. They were like, no, we're gonna make sure that we write our stuff down now, so we don't have problems later. And it was the right move, because of course, once again, only an idiot would make the claim that like, oh, the acts of Jesus and the acts of the apostles didn't happen. You'd have to be an idiot to make that claim, because no scholar of antiquity would deny those facts, because there was just so much historical record about them, and people knew these things happened. I went on a crazy tirade there, but basically, what I'm getting back to Saint Cecilia, the issue about trying to date when she existed is because we have entered the Dark Ages at this point, and the Dark Ages, literacy went back down, and so we ran back into the whole problem that we had in the ancient world of time periods, like having larger gaps between when somebody existed and then people writing crap about them. See, because once again, like, I guess like the weird thing too, I know there's like a weird a foreign concept because of us as like moderns or postmoderns, but like, see, anyone in the world today, we could easily write stuff down about them. That's like the thing about like Twitter, right, and like social media. Anything that happens that somebody does, you can immediately record it. And of course, like, you add like video, how easy it is to make videos in like the 21st century, like, it's easy to record stuff. And of course the internet takes it to a whole new level, because the internet in like the cyberspace can preserve all kinds of information. There's that old saying, the internet never forgets. And so there's that as well, that creates a new level of like how we can preserve knowledge and information. That did not exist for like, I mean, once again, the whole like cyberspace thing is like only 50 years, give or take. Maybe a little bit older. Since the 60s? The cyberspace has been a thing since the 60s. So, like, 60 years ago. Like, that like, we made huge strides in those 60 years. But basically the whole idea of, like, preserving information like that before the 60s, unheard of. No one would have ever thought that'd be possible, to preserve information like that. See, but in the ancient world, when you try to like know when somebody existed, like Saint Cecilia here, there'd be no way of knowing, and there's no easy way to record any information about her. Anything that would have been known about her is all like oral tradition, as we get to in this story. And that was a long ass tirade, but it was kind of fun for me to talk about it. This is totally why I was not going to power through the last like few stories of the Canterbury Tales. Alright, back to the story. Valerian bound himself with an oath. Oh, I should introduce Valerian, because I think I skipped something here. Okay. According to her life, the fair Virgin Cecilia was born of a noble Roman family, and brought up from her cradle in the faith of Christ, whose gospel was never absent from her thoughts. And I find it written that she never ceased to love and fear God, or to pray to him to preserve her maidenhood. Now when she was to be married to a youth named Valerian, and the day came of her wedding, such was the humbleness and piety of her spirit. She wore a haircloth under her skin, under the golden robe which so well became her. And while the organ played its music, she sang in her heart, O God, keep both my soul and body spotless, lest I perish. Every second and third day she fasted and gave herself up to continual and fervent prayer, for the love of him who died upon the tree. Now night came, when according to custom she must go to bed with him, Valerian. She spoke privately with him, saying, "Sweet and dearly beloved husband, there is a secret you may wish to hear, and which I will gladly tell you if you swear not to reveal it." Now Valerian bound himself with an oath that he would never betray her under any circumstance, come what may. And then at last she said, "I have an angel who loves me with a love so great that waking or sleeping he is always at hand to watch over my body. If he perceives you touch me, or if you touch me or make carnal love, he will slay you in the act without hesitation, and you will die in the flower of youth. But if you protect me with a pure love, for your purity he will love you as myself, and reveal his radiance and joy." Ah, yes, I have a spirit guardian, so no sex trick. That's basically what's going on here. Thus chastened according to God's will, Valerian replied, "If I am to trust you, let me see this angel and look upon him. If it should prove to be a real angel, I will do as you've asked. But believe me, if you love another man, I'll slay you both on the spot with this sword." To this Cecilia at once replied, "You shall see the angel if you wish, on condition you believe in Christ and are baptized. So go forth to the Appian Way, which is only 3 miles from the city, and speak to the poor people who live there, and I shall direct you. Tell them that I, Cecilia, sent you to them to show you the good old man Urban for secret reasons and a holy purpose. And when you see Saint Urban, tell him I have told you what I have told you, and when he is baptized and purged you from sin, then before you go you shall see the angel." So Valerian went to this place, and he found this holy old man Urban, just as he had been directed, hiding among the catacombs of the saints. Cryptic, yeah. He lost no time delivering this message. Having received it, Urban lifted up his hands for joy and let the tears fall from his eyes. "Almighty Lord, O Christ Jesus," he said, "Thou sower of the chaste ideal and shepherd of us all, take to thyself the fruit of this seed of chastity thou hast sown in Cecilia. How like a bee, busy and innocent, thine own handmaid Cecilia serves thee ever. For this husband whom she took, but now was like a lion rampant, yet here she sends him to thee as gentle as a lamb." And as he spoke, an old man clad in clothes of white radiance, carrying in his hand a book written with letters of gold, suddenly appeared and stood before Valerian. Seeing him, Valerian fell down in terror, like one dead. Whereupon the other caught hold of him and began to read from the book. "One Lord, one faith, one God alone, one Christendom, and one Father of us all, omnipotent and supreme." These words were all written in gold. When they had been read, the old man cried, "Do you or do you not believe these sayings?" "All this I believe," said Valerian, "for I dare maintain no man may conceive of anything more true under heaven." Upon this the old man vanished, and he knew not where. And Pope Urban christened him on the spot. Well, now he's a pope? I thought he was just some old priest guy. Now he's the pope? Pope Urban does have a cool ring to it. So Valerian went home and found Cecilia standing in his room with an angel. This angel carried in his hands 2 garlands, one of roses and one of lilies. I understand he gave the first to Cecilia, then took the second to her husband Valerian. Cherish these garlands always, with bodily purity and spotless mind. I have brought them to you from paradise. I assure you they will never decay nor lose their sweet odor. Nor shall any person set eyes on them unless he is chaste and hates wickedness. Now as for you, Valerian, because you responded so quickly to good advice, you may ask what you please, and the boon shall be given. To this Valerian replied, I have a brother I love more than any living man. I pray you let my brother be granted grace to know the truth as I do here. The angel said, Your request is pleasing to God. Both of you shall attend his blissful feast, bearing the palm of martyrdom. Alright. Yeah, you do what you need to do. Go get your food. I know you're streaming later. And as he spoke, Valerian's brother, Tiburci, arrived. Perceiving the odor that spread from the roses and lilies, he wondered much in his heart and said, Where can this sweet odor of rose and lily, which I smell in the room, come from at this time of the year? The perfume could hardly be stronger were I holding them in my hand. This sweet scent that I feel in my heart has changed my whole nature. Valerian told him, We have two bright and shining garlands, snow white and rose red, that your eyes have no power to see. And as it is my prayer that you can smell them, dear brother, so shall you see them, if only you hasten to believe aright and know the truth itself. Tiburci answered, Are you really saying this to me, or do I hear it in a dream? Surely, brother, we have been dreaming up till now, replied Valerian, but now for the first time we inhabit the truth. And how do you know, and in what way? Asked Tiburci. I shall explain to you, said Valerian. The truth was taught to me by the angel of God, whom you shall see if you renounce the idols and be clean, but not otherwise. St. Ambrose has elected to speak concerning the miracle of these two garlands in one of his prefaces. The excellent beloved doctor solemnly commends it thus. In order to receive the palm of martyrdom, Saint Cecilia, filled with the grace of God, forsook the world, and even her marriage bed, witnessed the conversion of Tiburci and Valerian, to whom God in his goodness apported two garlands of sweet-smelling flowers, and sent them by his angel. The maiden brought these men to bliss on high. The world has indeed learned the reward of chaste devotion to spiritual love. Then Cecilia plainly showed Tiburci that all idols were manifestly vain, for they are not only deaf and dumb, and enjoined him to forsake them. He who does not believe this is truly no more than a beast of the field. Hearing this, Tiburci was the one who just said that. Hearing this, Cecilia kissed his breast, overjoyed that he could see the truth. From today I take you for my comrade, said this blessed maiden, lovely and beloved. Then she continued, For as the love of Christ made me your brother's wife, by the same token, since you are willing to condemn your idols, I take you for my comrade here and now. Go now with my brother and be baptized, and purify yourself, so that you may behold the face of the angel to whom my brother told you. And Tiburci answered, Dear brother, first tell me where I should go, and to whom. To whom? Exclaimed Valerian. Come, be of good cheer, for I will take you to Pope Urban. To Urban, brother, cried Tiburci. That would be a miraculous feat. It seems to me, don't you mean the Urban who has been so often condemned to death, and lives in holes and corners? Here today and gone tomorrow, and dares not one stick his head out? Were he found, or could they spy him out, they'd burn him in a red-hot fire, and ourselves as well to keep him company. And while we seek this deity hidden away in heaven, in this world at any rate, we shall be burned. But Cecilia answered him bravely, My dearest brother, men might well fear, and with reason, to lose their lives if there were no other life than this. But fear you not, there is a better life elsewhere, which shall never be lost. Now through his mercy, the Son of God has told us of it. The Son of that Father made all things, and indeed the Spirit which proceeds from the Father has endowed with souls all creatures, which have been given intelligence and reason. In his sayings and miracles, while he was in this world, God's Son showed us that there is another life where men may dwell. To this Taberki replied, Dear sister, did you not just now say something like this? There is but one God, and one true Lord? How is it that you now speak of three? So basically now we're having the problem of the Christian doctrine of the Trinity. I shall explain that to you before I finish. Just as a man has three faculties, memory, imagination, and reason, so there may well be three persons in one divine being. Then she began earnestly preaching to him about Christ's coming, and taught him concerning his suffering, and many particulars of his passion. How for the redemption of mankind fettered in deadly grief and sin, the Son of God was constrained to dwell in this world. All these matters she explained to Taberki. After this, filled with holy aspiration, he went with Valerian to Pope Urban, who gave thanks to God and christened him with a glad and joyful heart. There and then he completed his instruction and made him God's knight. And after this, Taberki achieved such grace that every day he saw the angel in our temporal word, and whatever boon he asked of God was speedily granted. Well, if only it were that easy. It would be very difficult to list the many miracles that Jesus performed for them. But in fine, the officers of the city of Rome at length sought them out and fetched them before the prefect, Almachius, who examined them till he understood their aim and intentions. Then he sent them to the image of Jupiter, saying, This is my sentence. Whoever does not sacrifice to Jupiter, strike off his head. Then one Maximus, a subordinate officer of the prefect, arrested the martyrs of whom I speak, but felt compassion and wept as he led the saints away. And when Maximus heard their teaching, he obtained permission from the executioners and immediately brought them to his house. Before evening, with their teaching, they stripped not only Maximus and all of his people, but also the executioners, for their false beliefs, and made them believe in the one true God. At nightfall, Cecilia came with priests who christened them all together. Later, when the light of day began to grow, she spoke to them with great earnestness. Now, dearly beloved soldiers of Christ, cast away all the works of darkness and arm yourselves in the armor of light. You have fought a great battle for the truth. Your course is run, and you have kept faith. Now go, receive the unfading crown of light which the righteous judge whom you have served shall give as you have merited. And when she had thus spoken, they were led forth to perform the sacrifice. However, when they were brought to the place, they absolutely refused either to sacrifice or offer incense, but went down on their knees with humble hearts and steadfast devotion. Both their heads were struck off on the spot. Their souls went up to the King of Grace. Now Maximus, who had seen it all, bore witness forthwith, and weeping sadly denounced that he had seen their souls soar to heaven, attended by angels of clarity and light. His words converted many, and for this Almachius had him beaten so severely with a leaden whip, that the life forsook him. Then Cecilia took him and secretly buried him beside Taberki and Valerian, beneath a stone in her own burial ground. Upon this, Amalchius immediately ordered his officers to fetch Cecilia, so that she might perform sacrifice and offer incense to Jupiter. But converted by her wise teaching, they wept bitterly, giving full credence to her sayings, and crying again and again, Christ, the Son of God, and his co-equal, who is served by so good a servant, is the true God. This is our whole belief, and this we maintain with one voice, though we perish. Hearing of these events, Amalchius ordered Cecilia to be brought that he might see her. Now this was the very first thing he asked her. What kind of woman are you? I am a noble woman born, Cecilia said. I am asking you about your faith and religion, though this may get you in trouble. You have begun your examination stupidly, she retorted. You expect 2 answers to one question? You ask like a fool. To this rejoinder, Amalchius returned, Where do you get such contemptuous replies? TLDR, why are you being such a smartass? Where? From conscience and unfeigned good faith. Have you no respect for my authority? Your power is nothing to be afraid of. The power of mortal men is no more than a bladder full of wind. A needless point can deflate its blown up pride. You began by being wrong, and you persevere in wrong. Do you not know that our whole noble and mighty princes have commanded and ordained that every Christian shall suffer punishment unless he renounces his Christianity, but goes free if he abjures it? Your princes are wrong, and so are your nobles, said Cecilia. You make us guilty through a crazy law, but the truth is we are not guilty. It is you, who are perfectly aware of our innocence, who impute crime and odium upon us because we revere Christ and bear the name of Christian. But we know the power of that name may never abjure it. You have 2 choices, Amalchius replied. Either perform sacrifices or renounce Christianity. In that way you may escape. At this, the blessed and lovely maiden began to laugh. And to the judge she said, Stand convicted of your folly. Would you have me renounce innocence and make myself a criminal? Just look at him. He's making a fool of himself in open court. His mind wandering, he stares like a madman. Just going to take a quick drink here. You unhappy wretch, called Amalchius. Do you not realize the extent of my power? Have not our mighty princes given me both power and authority over life and death? How dare you address me with such arrogance? Okay, I gotta do a quick pause here. So what I'm gathering from this story, because I don't know the story as well as I should, I'm gonna guess that this is probably 200 AD. Because we're talking about a time where, even though Cecilia may be a born Christian, the Romans are very hostile toward Christianity, which would have definitely been a thing in the early days of Christianity, so from 1st century to early 4th century. Because once again, it wasn't until like 320 AD where Constantine made Christianity the official religion. But before that, there was tons of hostility between the Romans and the Christians, and of course for obvious reasons, because the Christians were not like bowing down basically to the Roman traditions, you know, not worshipping Roman gods, not worshipping the emperor. As we kind of see in this case here, the Romans are trying to tell the Christians to like, no, you must worship the way we do, and the Christians are refusing, and then they just get executed. There were tons of Christian martyrs in like the 2nd and 3rd century. 3rd century for sure, like 200 AD-ish, and so forth, there was a lot more like open aggression and just like the killing of Christians. And part of this was because, well, there's several reasons for this. The first reason was because on a political level, the Romans feared that the Christians didn't hold like loyalty to the crown. So they would be afraid that, let's say, in a foreign invasion, you know, befell upon Rome, and then the Christians would not be reliable on like choosing sides, because the Christian worldview is that, well, they believe Jesus is king, not the emperor, and the Christian's allegiance is to Christ, not the emperor. And so, and this is actually what caused Christianity to always have headbutts no matter where it went, was because it kind of, that whole like belief in Jesus as king is antithetical to how states operate. Because of course in any state you view the state as the ultimate authority. In Christianity it's, you know, Jesus is the ultimate authority. So, you know, those are two very different ideas. I remember I was explaining this to my cousin, because we were talking about like Japan and Christianity. I mentioned this on several streams too, because if you actually look at the history of Japan and Christianity, it's actually an interesting history between them. But basically the same kind of problem occurred. In traditional Shintoism, as well as like Bushido, a person's allegiance is to the emperor, and the emperor is viewed as like a god. But the Christians show up and they say, well, no, God is this immortal person in the person of Jesus Christ. That's who God is. That's who we put our ultimate allegiance in. And so, like, the Japanese had trouble with that. They say, well, where do my allegiances lie? And that's always the headbutt, no matter where Christianity goes. And that's something that even in the 21st century, every Christian deals with that. Every person deals with it. That's why there's hostility, especially like, Streaming Parson hot take of the week. Also, hello Gauntlets, welcome to the stream. Hot take of the week. That's why, I hate to say this, but like, you're progressive, and I use that term loosely because that can mean a bunch of things, right? But more politically left-leaning, and that also has a very wide range to it. But your typical progressive tends to be openly hostile towards Christians, and it's the same thing, just like how it is in this story with Japan's history with Christianity. Wherever Christianity goes, this is always the problem. It's your typical progressive has like, no, the state. This is why, once again, like, it took Hitler a while to figure this out, but when he started like increasing the power of the Nazi Party, he realized, oh shit, I actually have to take care of these Christians because they're a real problem. And this is such a bad way of saying this, but like when Hitler started like rounding up Christians along with Jews and then like killing a bunch of Christians, Hitler wanted to get ahead of the Christians becoming a problem, because Hitler knew. And I was gonna say like Hitler was making a smart tactical move, and to be fair, from a Nazi perspective, it was a very intelligent tactical move to really like really hammer down and oppress and kill Christians openly and make examples of them. So sure, there was whole like gassing Jews and like gas chambers, but Hitler had fun like just taking like a Christian to a street and having Nazis gun him down, because they're like, Christians must be made examples of. Because Hitler knew that with the Christian mindset of, no, Jesus is king, he knew Christians would not fall in line with the Nazi party. He knew that. And so he had to make public examples of them. And so this is where a great theologian, Deirdre Bonhoeffer, He was a theologian during like World War II times, and Bonhoeffer before he um, it's a weird story. It's one of those like, on the one hand, we could have done things the easy way, but Bonhoeffer chose not to do things the easy way, and then like sure, World War II ended up happening because of Bonhoeffer in some ways, because basically Bonhoeffer was he was part of a special task force. So basically, this whole like Hitler making public examples of Christians by killing them publicly. Bonhoeffer was actually like he was part of a task force, and their whole job was to assassinate Adolf Hitler. That was the whole like task force's job. But eventually, Bonhoeffer said, "No, we're not going to do it. It is not the right time." Which that sounds crazy because especially, and this is where like once again it seems so crazy, but hindsight being 2020, perhaps God used this opportunity to allow for something better. For instance, like the crushing of the Nazi Party as a whole, the establishment of Israel, the reestablishment of the state of Israel, because of the Holocaust and stuff like that. But basically, Bonhoeffer could have been like a Hitler, like could have been an assassin that assassinated Hitler. That was, and Bonhoeffer was a very devout Christian man, and the reason why he was handpicked was because a lot of these revolutionaries, they were composed of Christians that wanted revenge. But Bonhoeffer came to realize, like, no, this isn't going to bring back our brothers who were publicly executed. Killing Hitler like this won't fix that. This is one of those like typical anime trope things. Yeah, I'm gonna turn Dieter Bonhoeffer into an anime character now because I can do that. So he basically came to the resolve. You should definitely read his writings. Dieter Bonhoeffer. He tells us in less anime terms, but basically, his resolve was that no, killing Hitler like this will not bring back all our lost like brothers in Christ, if you will. It won't bring them back. They're gone. We have to accept that. But our faith in Christ, we know that even though Hitler's done all these bad things to our brethren, the Lord will save their soul. It is not our place to act as like judge, jury, and executioner. We cannot simply do this out of revenge. It's wrong for us to do this out of revenge. And if we had real, like, our faith in God convicts us that God has a better plan. Perhaps God has a better plan, which is one of those, like, I know it's one of those weird things that, like, when Christians say God has a plan, usually it happens when something bad happens. It's kind of that, like, weird, sick joke. But basically, Bonhoeffer was like, no, we're not going to assassinate Hitler like this. It won't change what has happened. And then, of course, in the hindsight being 2020, it actually ended up being better that Hitler wasn't just assassinated like that, but rather the Nazi Party was dismantled as a result of World War II. So it's more like do you stop just the one man, or do you destroy the evil ideology of Nazism? And the latter is the better, which is what we ended up getting. So anyway, I know that was a crazy like side history thing, but once again, you should read Dieter Bonhoeffer and his writings because they're absolutely great. But anyway, going back with like the fundamental problem that Christians posed was that they don't serve the state, because Christians are so caught up on this whole like Jesus is our king and our allegiances lie beyond the state. And you've heard me say this before, and I know it's like, this is once again why progressives are openly hostile to Christians. I am a Christian long before I'm a Canadian. I admit that. I'm open to say that. I'm a Christian before I'm a Canadian. The fans, the Christianese people, they would use, when they speak Christianese, they would say like, oh, like, I am not a citizen of this world. My citizenship is beyond this world. And, I know that sounds like super tacky. But, like, the fact of the matter is like our allegiances are to Christ before anyone else, and that and that angers people who like worship the state. Like Nazis, for instance, right? That's why Nazis hated Christians, right? Because once again, the Christian's allegiance is not to the state. And to my brothers and sisters in Christ who are watching this and seeing the world as it is now, that's something we got to remember, is that our allegiances are to Christ and and His kingdom, not to the kingdoms of this world. And and understandable that it's rough. The world is openly hostile because of that. The world wants you to get in line, but to truly follow Christ means like, no, you cannot make me denounce my faith. You cannot rule my life like that. And that's where the secularized version that became popular out of this kind of Christian thinking was I rather die on my feet a free man than to live on my knees as your slave kind of idea. That's where it comes from. And that's something that we just have to be bold of sometimes, because it is so... It's rough, to speak to my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. It is rough, because, there's so much pressure to fall in line and water down your Christianity and whatever. But, you got to stand by the river of truth and plant your feet. And you tell the world to move. Hit that like, you know where I got that reference from. You plant your feet at the river of truth, and the world tells you to move. You say, no, you move. And we need to have that emboldened confidence. That's what it means to that's what it means to have the Spirit living in you, and to be emboldened in your Christian faith. And that's what this story here is getting at. As Cecilia tells this Roman official, like, no, I'm not going to denounce my faith. Unhappy wretch, cried Amalchius, do you not realize the extent of my power? Have not our mighty princes given me both power and authority over life and death? How dare you address me with such arrogance? I do not speak with arrogance, but steadfastness, said Cecilia. For my part, I can say we Christians have mortal hatred of sin of pride. And if you are not afraid to hear the truth, I will publicly and unconvincingly demonstrate that you have uttered a monstrous lie. You say that your princes have given you power of life and death over the people. You who can only destroy life. You have no other authority or power. But you can say your princes have made you the servant of death. If you claim to be more than you lie, for your power is scant. Enough of your impudence, cried Amalchius. And before you go, sacrifice to our gods. I care not what insult you fling at me, for I can bear it like a philosopher. But I will not endure the contumely you heap upon our gods. You stupid creature, answered Cecilia. Ever since you first opened your mouth, your every word has proclaimed to me your stupidity and shown you up in all ways for an arrogant officer. An impotent judge. Impotent. Wow, I can't speak English. An impotent judge. Ha ha! You might as well be blind for all the good your bodily eyes are to you. For a thing which we can all see is a stone, as is indeed perfectly obvious, the same stone you call a god. Take my advice, since you can't see out of those blind eyes of yours. Place your hand upon it and test it, and you will find a stone. Shame it is that the people should hold you in derision and laugh at your folly. For it's common knowledge everywhere that Almighty God is in the heavens above, while these idols, as you can plainly see, are of no use whatsoever, either to you or to themselves. In fact, they're not even worth a brass farthing. These and words like these she spoke to him, till he grew furious and ordered her to be led home. "Burn her in a bath of flames in her own house," he said. As he commanded, it was done. For they sealed her in a bath, and lit a great fire underneath, which they kept going night and day. And there she sat throughout the long night and the next day. But for all the fire and heat of the bath, she stayed quite cool and felt no pain. She didn't even sweat. But in that bath she was to lose her life, for in the inquiety of his heart, Amalchius sent a messenger with orders to slay her. The executioner struck her 3 blows on the neck, but could not contrive to sever it completely. And because at that time there was a law that none should suffer the penalty of a 4th strike, be it light or heavy, he dared do no more, and went away, and left her lying there half dead, with her neck cut open. Damn, she's a tough lady if she doesn't get her head chopped off in 3 hits. Usually it only takes 1. The Christians who were around her carefully caught the blood in sheets. In this torment she lived 3 days, never ceasing to teach and preach the faith, somehow with an open neck, to those she had converted. And she gave them her goods and movables to deliver to Pope Urban, saying, "I asked Heaven's King for 3 days, and no more, that I might commend these souls to you before I go, and that my house might be converted into a church forevermore." Saint Urban and his deacons secretly fetched away the body, and buried it honorably by night among the other saints. Her house is called the Church of Saint Cecilia. Saint Urban, as was fitting, consecrated it, and there Christ and his saint are worthily honored to this day. So, I guess like the nun tells a typical martyr story, as you would expect. A nun would tell that kind of story. I have no other comments. I kind of gave them all already. But it's just a reminder, you know, you gotta stand for what you believe. And the world will challenge you, but that's just how, you know, that's fine. And if I may be so bold, you know, to my brothers and sisters in Christ that may watch this, the truth is not afraid to be challenged. Only a lie is. And so, when people go up against you for your Christian faith, like, accept the challenge, because the truth is not afraid. After all, what does the truth have to hide? Whereas lies are scared of being challenged. And so stand, you know, plant your faith at the, plant your feet at the river of truth. And when the world tells you to move, you say, no, you move. And that's the kind of faith that we need. Because, you know, there's a lot of places where you don't see it as much as you like, and it's kind of not good. But my encouragement to you is that don't be willing to stand and fight for what you believe to be true, what you know to be true. And that's the whole point of the Nun's Tale. You know, Saint Cecilia and all these guys, they all get martyred in the story. Like, damn, like they all just die pretty quickly, because, like, yeah, bad governments will do that. They'll just kill them wholesale. I mean, once again, read Deirdre Bonhoeffer's commentary on, like, the Nazis. It's a good insight on like what it means to face evil. And it's a great read. I was just thinking about that because, I mean, it's totally relevant to the story. I mean, once again, this nun's tale is a story that's continuously told, and so throughout history, and you know, it's a thing that goes on today as well in other parts of the world, which is why you pray. You know, it's just a reminder of like how good we have it in like North America. Because there's a lot of places in other parts of the world where, like, yeah, Christians go through stuff like this in reality. And so we just pray for them as well, because it's rough. It's rough. We know that Christ receives them in His hands as well. Alright, let's move on to the next story. On a different note, now since we just read like that super dark story of martyrdom. Let's move on to the Yeoman's prologue. Now when the life of Saint Cecilia was ended, we hadn't ridden 5 miles before a man overtook us at Broughton under Blean. He was dressed in black clothes and wore a white surplice underneath. That's kind of ominous. It seems as if he spurred hard for the last 3 miles, since his hackney, a drapple grey, sweated fearfully, while the horse his yeoman rode was in such a lather it could scarcely keep going. Foam lay thick upon the breast harness, and spotted him all over till he looked like a magpie. Upon his crupper lay a doubled over leathern bag. He seemed to be carrying little and travelling light, for it was summer. As if it was summer, because it's not summer. It's spring in the story. It's summer here, but not here. You know what I mean. I began wondering to myself what he was, till I noticed how the hood was sewn to his cloak. From which, after reflecting for a while, I judged him to be a canon of some kind. His hat hung down behind him on a string, for he had ridden at more than a walk or trot. He's been galloping like a madman. He had a burdock leaf under his hood to keep the sweat off and cool his head. And it was something to see him sweat. His forehead dripped like a still filled with plantain or a pellitory. As he came up with us, he called out, "Oh, God bless this jolly company. I've been galloping hard on your account. I wanted to catch you up and ride with this happy band." And damn, a little too much info. What, the dude is like massively sweating? He's basically sweating buckets. His yeoman was also full of politeness and said, "Sirs, I saw you when you rode out of your hostelry this morning. So I told my lord and master here, for he's been very keen to ride with you for the fun of it. He loves the chat." "Good luck to you for telling him, my friend," said our host, "for it certainly looks as if your master were a man of parts. Or so I judge, and full of high spirits, I'll be bound. Perhaps he can tell a pleasant tale or two and entertain our party." "Who, sir? My master? Why, surely he knows more than enough about fun and games." "Trust me, sir, if you knew him as well as I do, you'd be amazed at the skill and ability he has in all sorts of matters. He's taken on many big projects which would be pretty difficult for any of you here to bring off. Unless he showed you how. Though he looks ordinary enough, as he rides among you, you'll find it would pay to get to know him. And I'd go so far as to wager all I have in my possession that you wouldn't forego his acquaintance for a tidy sum. I'd give you good warning. He's a man of great distinction, a really remarkable man. Oh, well then, said our host, will you please tell me if he is a cleric or not? Explain what he is. No, he's much more than a cleric, to be sure, said the yeoman, and I'll tell you something of his trade in a few words. Few words being operative, right? Let me tell you that my master knows such secret arts, but you will not learn all his secrets from me. I still help a bit with his work. He could turn all the ground over, which we are riding as far as the town of Canterbury, clean upside down, and pave the whole with gold and silver. When the yeoman had made this statement, our host exclaimed, "Ha ha! God bless us! Then it seems rather wonderful to me, seeing your master is so very ingenious and entitled to respect, that he should think so little of his appearance. For such a man, his coat isn't worth a brass farthing, or I'll be damned. It's filthy and all tattered. May I ask why your master is so bedraggled, when he has the power to buy so much better cloth? Supposing he can do as you say, kindly tell me that." "Why ask me?" said the yeoman. "So help me God, he'll never come to any good, but I won't admit saying this, so please keep it under your hat. It's my belief he's too clever by half. Enough is as good as a feast, as they say. Too much is a mistake. That's why I think him a fool and an idiot. When a man has too many brains, it often happens he misuses them, which is the case with my master, and a sore plague to me. God mend it, and that's all I can tell you." "Never mind that, good yeoman," said the host. "But as you know about your master's accomplishments, let me press you to tell us what he does, since he's so skilled and ingenious. Where do you live, if it may be asked?" "In the outskirts of a town, lurking in corners and blind alleys where thieves and robbers naturally gather, living in fear and concealment like all who dare not show their faces. That's how we live, if the truth must be told." "Can I ask you something else?" our host went on. "Tell me, why is your face so discolored?" "St. Peter!" exclaimed the yeoman. "It's been unlucky, that's why. I'm so used to blow the fire, I suppose it's changed my color. I don't spend my time peering into mirrors, but working myself to death and learning to transmute metal into gold." So he's an alchemist. "We make ourselves giddy pouring into the fire, but for all that fail of our hope and never reaching our goal. We delude any number of folk, and borrow, say, a pond or two, or 10, or 12, or even bigger sums of gold, and make them believe we can double their money at least. But it's all lies. Though we have good hopes it can be done, and keep groping after it. However, the science of alchemy is so far beyond that we cannot catch up with it. Whatever we say, it slips away so fast, and it'll beggar us in the end." While the yeoman was chattering away, the canon drew near him, and heard everything he said. This canon was always suspicious of people talking, for as Cato says, the guilty suppose themselves the subject of every conversation. This was the reason he edged closer to the yeoman to hear what he said. Then he shouted at this yeoman, "Hold your tongue! Don't say another word. If you do, you'll pay dearly for it. You're slandering me in front of these people, and what's more, you're revealing what you ought to keep dark." "That's right," said the host. "Tell away, no matter what. Don't give a sixpence for his threats." "My faith, no more I do," replied the yeoman. And when the canon saw that there was no help for it, but his yeoman meant to tell all his secrets, for sheer vexation and shame he turned and fled. "Ah!" cried the yeoman, "we'll get some fun out of this." Now I'll tell you all I know, seeing that he's gone. The devil choke him. From now on, I promise I'll have no more to do with him, no matter if he offers pence or pounds. So, wow, he just like quit his job right there, I guess. Sorrow and shame fall on him. He was the first to drag me into this game. Oh, no game for me. I tell you straight. That's what I feel, whatever you may think. Yet for all the misery, for all the misery, grief, toil, and misfortune it brought, I could never bring myself to break away from it. Would to God I had the brains to tell you everything that belongs to this science. Still, I'll tell you a bit about it, and as my master is gone, I'll hold nothing back. What I know, I shall reveal. Now I've lived, the Yeoman's Tale. I've lived with this canon for 7 years, and am none the better for his science. Oh, I guess I should explain what a canon is. So, when we're talking about like this canon as if it's a person, it's just another way of saying like an engineer. And so, of course, primarily what engineers did back in, the 11th century was engineer like machinations of war, which is why they were called cannons, because they make cannons and other things like that. So basically, yeah, when I say the cannon, what I'm talking about is like an engineer, basically. Oh, come on. Okay, just hold up a sec. Okay. Oh. Obligatory water noise. Also, I have to like do the posture check. Because like one of the problems is that like maybe I sit too close to the camera, but at the same time I don't want to be too far from the mic. So I have to like sit funny in this chair. But I should probably have like a better posture. So maybe I'll move back a bit and sit up properly. Alright, let's continue. Or rather, let's begin the Yeoman's Tale. Now I've lived with this canon for 7 years, and I'm none the better for his science. By it, I've lost all that I've ever had. Like many another besides myself, God knows there was a time when I used to be gay and spirited with good clothes and other fine trappings. Now an old sock does duty for my cap. That's kinda nasty. My color was fresh and ruddy. These days it's leaden and wan. Take up alchemy, and bitterly you'll rue it. You'll rue it. All that work, my eyes water still from the wool that's been pulled over them. See what you get from alchemy? That slippery science has stripped me bare. I've nothing left whichever way I turn. And on top of this, the fact is, I'm so in debt on account of the gold I've borrowed. As long as I live, I'll never pay it off. Let me be a warning forevermore. Just seeing how long this is going to take a while. Whoever takes it up is done for if he goes on. Now if you ask me, for all he's got, so help me God, is an addled head and an empty purse. And when his own goods have been hazarded and lost through his madness and folly, he eggs on others, and they lose their property as he himself has done. Rascals find it a joy and comfort to have companions in misery, or so a scholar once taught me. But of that no matter, I'll tell you what we do. Very wise we seem, our jargon so weird and technical, in the laboratory where we practice this recondite science of ours. Me, I blow the fire till my heart gives out. Why should I give all the proportions of the ingredients? For example, of silver 5 or 6 ounces or so, or some such quantity, or busy myself with telling you their names. Orpiment, burnt bones, iron fillings, grounds, to fine powder, and describing how they're all placed in an earthenware pot. Salt and pepper are put in before the powders I spoke of, tightly covered with a glass plate, together with much else. How glass and pot are sealed with clay, so that no air whatsoever can escape. How's the fire regulated? Moderate or hot? Of the worry and trouble we have vaporized our ingredients in the amalgaming and calcining of quicksilver, or crude mercury as we call it. For all our ingenuity, we never attain a result. Nothing's any good, nor orpiment, nor mercury sublime, nor lead proctoside, ground in a porphyry, so many ounces of each. Our labours in vain. Neither the risen gases, nor the solids stuck to the bottom of the pot are the least use in the job we're doing. All of our labours and drudgery lost all, and all our capital as well. Devil take it. There's any number of things pertaining to this science of ours. Though being uneducated, I can't rehearse them in order. Still, I list them as they come to mind, even if I can't put them in their proper categories. Armenian clay, verdigris, borax, sundry glass, and earthenware vessels, urinals, retorts, vials, crucibles, vapories, gourd retorts, alembics, and stuff not worth a leak. That was a lot of jargon there. No need to reckon up the lot. Rubificiated water, bull's gall, arsenic, and ammoniac, brimstone, and if I wanted to waste your time, I could recite any number of herbs, agrimony, valerian, Wordsworth, and so on. Our lamps burning day and night, trying to get results. Our furnace for calculations, and for the ablification of water, unslaked lime, chalk, white of egg, various powders, ashes, dung, piss, clay, wax reticles, saltpeters, vitriol. There's a lot of mats he's going through. The different firings of wood and charcoal, potash, alkali, prepared salt, combust, coagulates, yeast, wort, argol, rat's bane, another absorbent of incorporative substances. Oh, that was a lot of words. Our citronized silver and substances in fermentation, or humanitically, or hermeneutically, that's why it didn't make sense the first time, hermeneutically sealed. Our molds, assaying instruments, and all the rest. Damn, that was a lot of techno babble. I'll report to you, just as I myself was taught, the 4 spirits and the 7 bodies in their order. So as I often heard my master name them. The first spirit is called quicksilver, the second orpiment, the third sal ammoniac, and fourth brimstone. Now here are the 7 bodies. Gold for the sun, silver for the moon, iron for Mars, quicksilver for Mercury, lead for Saturn, tin for Jupiter, and copper for Venus. Oh, so help me God. Nobody who takes up this confounded science will ever make enough to live on. He'll lose the very penny he spends on it. Of that I haven't the slightest doubt. Anybody want to make a fool of himself? Then go study alchemy. If you've money, come on, you too can be an alchemist. Maybe you think it's easy to learn? Oh, no. 100 times no. Be you monk, friar, priest, canon, no matter what, and sit day and night over your books to study this weird and wonderful science. God knows it will all be in vain, and worse than vain. Oh, by God. As for teaching it to an uneducated man, pooh. Don't talk about it. It can't be done. But whenever they're book learning or not, it's all the same in the end. In exactly the same situation, that's to say, they were nowhere. But I forget to list the acids, metal filings, ways of softening and hardening substances. Oh, we're doing the technobabble again. The oils, ablutions, and fusible metals. The full list would transcend any book there is. I believe that. It would be best if I gave myself a rest from all these names. Me too. For I swear I've repeated enough to make the grimmiest fiend from hell. Ow. Ah, no. Let it go. Each of us desperately seeking the philosopher's stone, or elixir as it is called. If only we had it, we'd be safe enough. But I declare to God in heaven that for all our skill and ingenuity, everything we have, a thought which would almost drive us crazy, were it not that hope creeps into our hearts with the constant expectation, even in the bitterest moments, that the philosopher's stone will rescue us in the end. Hard and painful are such hopes and suppositions. I give you good warning. It's a never-ending quest. Trust in the future tense makes men part with every single thing they've ever had. Yet of this science they have never had enough. It seems to carry a fatal enchantment. For if they had no more than a sheet to wrap themselves in at night, and an old cloth to their backs, to walk abroad by day, they'd sell both to spend on alchemy. They can't stop until there's nothing left. And wherever they go, you can always tell them by the smell of brimstone. Oh, I'm starting to feel the fade there. Where was I? Oh, yes. They reek like goats. Take it from me. Their sting's so hot and ram-like, you can smell it a mile off. And so, if you want to, you can tell these people by their stench and threadbare clothes. And if you take them aside and ask them why they're so shabbily dressed, they'll whisper in your ear they were spotted. They'd put up to if they were spotted, they'd be put to death for their alchemy. That's how they take innocent folks for a ride. Oh, enough of this. I'll get on to my story. Before the pot is placed upon the fire, my master, and none but he, heats up a certain quantity of metals. I can speak out now that he's gone. For he's said to be an expert. At least I know he's got that reputation. And yet he's always running into trouble. You ask me how. What generally happens is the pot explodes. So goodbye to the lot. These metals are so combustible, our walls could stand up to them only if they were built on stone and mortar. As it is, they go straight through the wall, and some of the stuff buries itself in the earth. We've got a lot of peanuts. Wait. Yeah, we've got a lot of peanuts like this. That's a weird ass word. Some get scattered all over the floor, and the rest the rest shoots up into the roof. Though the devil never shows himself in our sight. I bet the old villain is with us. In hell, where he's lord and master. And there can hardly be more wrath and woe and rancor. For when our pots blow up, as I've said, then everyone begins scolding and feeling badly done by. Peanuts, yeah. You spelt it right, too. I'm not totally sure what that is. Yeah, stretched a little bit there. Posture check. The previous one I did wasn't enough, I guess. I'm feeling myself fading a bit. It's been a long day. Every Friday's a long day. Every day's a long day. Alright. Say one. It was because of the way the fire was built. Another says, oh no, the bellows were the trouble. And then I'm scared, for that's my job. Ah, stuff, cries a third. You don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't properly regulated. Says a fourth. Shut it and listen to me. It was because the firing wasn't beach. That's the one and only reason, or I am a Dutchman. Myself, I have no idea what the trouble was. All I know is, we're in the middle of a row. Well, says my master, it cannot be helped. I'll guard against these risks in the future. I'm pretty sure the pot was cracked. But be that as it may, don't stand there gaping. Look alive, sweep the floor as usual, and clean up. And cheer up, do not lose heart. Then the debris is swept into a heap, a canvas laid upon the floor, and all this rubbish thrown into a sieve, sifted and panicked over again and again. Oh, by God, says one, there's still some of our metal here. Though we haven't gotten it all. Even if things went wrong just now, they would come right after another. Perhaps if you don't speculate, you won't accumulate. Lord save us, a merchant can't always be prosperous. Believe me. There was something wrong somewhere. I know it. Another says the fire was too hot. But whether too hot or too cold, I'll say this much. It works out wrong every time. We fail of our object, yet go on without our raving lunacy. We go on without our raving lunacy. When we're all together, each of us seems as wise as Solomon. But as I've heard tell, all that glisters is not gold. Not every apple good that delights the eye. Whatever people say, and that's exactly the case with us. The one who seems the wisest is the biggest fool when it comes to the test. And the most honest seeming a thief, by Jesus. This will be plain to you by the time I finish my story. Ah, we've only just started. So these people torture me with this. Just gotta take a breather. Oh. Act 2. There is among us a canon regulator who could contaminate a city the size of Nineveh, Rome, Alexandria, Troy, and any 3 others put together. If he lived 1,000 years, no man could record all of his tricks and bottomless deceit. In the whole wide world, there's no one who could touch him as a swindler. When he talks with someone, it's in so involved a jargon, with a delivery so subtle, that in 2 minutes he's got the good fellow completely humbugged. Unless he happens to be another fiend of hell like himself. He's taken in hundreds of people before now, and will again so long as there is breath in him. Yet people travel miles to seek him out, and make his acquaintance, knowing nothing of his true character, which, if you care to listen, I'll reveal here and now. You honorable canon regular, don't think I'm slandering your fraternity, even though my tale is of a canon. Ha-ha! Heaven knows some rascals always to be found in every religious body. But God forbid an entire fraternity should pay for the folly of a single individual. I haven't the least intention of slandering you. I merely wish to castigate what amisses. Oh, what now? I'm gonna wait for the phone call to finish. Because I can hear it elsewhere. Like, you can't hear the one that's in this room. Okay, there you go. Okay. Where was I? Oh, yeah. I wish merely to castigate what's amiss. This tale isn't directed at you in particular, for it's applicable to many others also. As you well know, none of Christ's 12 apostles was a traitor, but Judas himself. Why then should that stigma attest to the rest, who were innocent? I tell you it's the same in your case, except for one thing. If you'll listen to me, should there be any Judas among you, take my advice and get rid of him in good time if you stand in dread of ruin or disgrace. Please don't be vexed, but listen to what I'm going to say about this particular case. There was a chantry priest who had lived for many years in London. He had made himself so agreeable and attentive to the landlady of the house where he lodged, and boarded, that she wouldn't let him pay a penny for either board or clothing, no matter how well he dressed, and so he had plenty of spending money. Never mind that, I'll now proceed with my story of the canon who brought this priest to ruin. Well, one day, this rascally canon visited the priest in the room where he lodged and begged him to lend a certain sum of gold, promising to pay it back in full. Said he, "Lend me a gold mark, just for 3 days, and I'll pay it back on the day. If I let you down another time, you can have me hanged by the neck." The priest handed him a gold mark on the spot. The canon thanked him over and over, then took his leave. He took his leave and left, and went. On the 3rd day, he brought the money and handed it back to the priest. Upon which the priest was so highly delighted, he said, "Really, I've no objection at all to lending a man a noble or 2, or even 3, or whatever I have on me, if he's the honest sort who always pays back on the nail whatever happens. I never can say no to a man like that." "What?" exclaimed the canon. "Me dishonest? That would be something new indeed. Oh, so help me God, my word is a thing I'll always keep till the day I crawl into my grave. Besides that, as you believe your creed, God be thanked, and I think this is a good time to say it. No man was ever the worse for lending me gold or silver. For there has never been the smallest deceit in my heart. Now, sirs," he went on, "since you've been so generous and shown me such kindness, I'll repay something of my secret knowledge, in partial repayment for your goodness. And if you'd like to learn, I'll give you a clear demonstration of my skill in alchemy. Now watch with your own eyes. You'll see me perform a miracle before I leave." "Indeed," said the priest, "will you be really?" "By St. Mary, go ahead by all means." "As you wish, then," said the canon. "God forbid I should do otherwise." Now how well that thieving canon could tender his services. Very true it is that provided service stinks. Oh, that's not the word. Proffered? Proffered? What kind of word is proffered? The old authorities testify, and very soon I shall prove it in the case of this canon, father of all fraud, whose greatest joy and delight lay ever in bringing Christian folk to destruction. For his heart was filled with fiendish schemes. God keep us all from this lying humbuggery. The priest knew nothing of the man he was dealing with, nor had he the least suspicion of what was in store for him. Ah, simple priest, poor, innocent, about to be blinded by your own covetousness. Luckless fellow, your misunderstanding is completely clouded over. You've not the slightest idea of the deception this fox has planned. You cannot escape his wily stratagems. And so, unhappy man, the sooner to reach the consummation of your ruin, I'll make haste to relate, so far as my skill affords, your brainless folly and the duplicity of that other wretch. You take this canon to be my master host? I swear by the Queen of Heaven, it was not he, but another, 100 times more cunning, who swindled people time and time again. It numbs my wits to speak of his double dealing. Whenever I talk of his dishonesty, my cheeks grow red for shame of him, or at any rate begin to burn, since I should know. I've no color in my face, because the various fumes from the metals you hear me speak of have consumed and wasted it. Now mark this canon's villainy. Said he to the priest, Oh, now, sir, let your man go for some quicksilver, that we may have it at once. Let him bring us 2 or 3 ounces of silver, and as soon as he comes back, you'll see a marvelous thing, such as you have never seen before. Whew. Getting tired here. It shall be done without fail, said the priest, and ordered his servant to fetch the metal. He readily obeyed, and went out and returned with 3 ounces of quicksilver, no less, which he handed over to the canon, who laid it down carefully, then told the servant to bring some charcoal that he might set to work at once. The charcoal was fetched without delay. The canon took from his bosom a crucible, which he showed the priest. Do you see this instrument? Take it in your hand, and you yourself put it in an ounce of this quicksilver. And now begin your training as an alchemist. In the name of Christ! There are very few to whom I'd offer to reveal this much of my science. For you'll now see an experiment by which I'll transform or reduce the quicksilver and make it malleable, without deception, and under your very eyes, and turn it into silver as sterling and fine as any in my purse or yours. Or anywhere else for that, that purse of yours, or anywhere else. Or you can call me a fraud and unfit ever to show my face among honest folk. There was like a weird semicolon there, and there was like, oh, that's a long read. I've powder here that cost me a lot. It will do the trick, for it's the foundation of my power, which I'm about to reveal to you. Send your man away and let him stand outside. Now keep the door shut while we're busy with secret matters, so that nobody spies on us whether we're at work on this science. Now all was done as he asked. The servant went out at once. His master then shut the door, and they quickly got down to work. At the request of this scoundrelly canon, the priest placed the stuff upon the fire, which he diligently blew, while the canon sprinkled into the crucible a powder. Now I don't know what it was, chalk or glass or something else not worth a curse, so as to hoodwink the priest. Next he asked him to make haste and pile charcoal on top of the crucible. As a mark of my regard for you, said the canon, everything we have to do shall be done with your own 2 hands. A thousand thanks, exclaimed the delighted priest, piling on charcoal as the canon requested, and while he was busying himself, that damned scoundrel, that rascally canon, the foul fiend fetch. That's a interesting tongue twister there. Foul fiend fetch. Took a beechwood coal, in which a hole had been skillfully pierced, and put therein an ounce of silver filings, stopping the hole with wax to keep the fillings in. Now understanding this, the fraudulent device was not made on the spot, but prepared beforehand, like other things he brought with him, and which I'll tell you about later. The canon had planned to trick the priest before he came, and so indeed he did before they parted. He couldn't lay off until he skinned him. When I speak of him and mind feels much, I'll pay him out for his lies if I know how. But he's here today and gone tomorrow. He's so restless he never stays in one place. Now mark this, gentlemen, for the love of God. taking the piece of charcoal I spoke of above. The canon held it concealed in his hand, and while the priest was busily stacking the coals, as I told you, he remarked, Friend, you're doing it all wrong. It's not properly bedded, but I'll soon put it right. Just let me fiddle with it for a bit. Oh, by St. Giles, I feel sorry for you. Oh, you're so hot, I can see you're dripping with sweat. Take this cloth and wipe it off. And while the priest mopped his face, the canon, devil fetch him, took his piece of charcoal and placed it over the center of the crucible, then blew hard until the coals began to glow briskly. Let's have a drink now, said the canon. Trust me, all will be well in a moment. Let's sit down and refresh ourselves. And when the canon's beechwood coal had burned away, all the filings fell out of the hole and into the crucible, as would naturally happen, since they had been placed exactly above it. But of this the poor priest knew nothing. He had no notion of the trick that was being played on him, but thought all the coals were equally sound. When he saw the time had come, the alchemist said, Get up now, master priest, and stand beside me, as I'm pretty certain you haven't a moldful prep outside, and get me a piece of chalk, and with luck I can cut it to the shape of a mold. While you're about it, bring a bowl or pan of water, full of water, and then you'll see yourself how well this works. And so that you shall have no disbelief or wrong suspicion of me while you're away. I'll not leave your side, but go and return with you. Okay. Yeah. I'm feeling it now. It's like, oh. See, there was no way I was going to power through the rest of the stories today. There was no way. Now, where was I? Okay. In short, they opened the chamber door, locked it, took the key with them, and went out and came back forthwith. Why take all day telling of it? The canon took the chalk and cut it in the shape of a mold, as I described. Now listen. From his sleeve he took a small bar of silver, hangings too good for him, no more than an ounce in weight. So it's like really thin, I guess. Now mark his damn juggling. He cut the mold to the same length and breadth of this bar, and so adroitly that you may be sure the priest never noticed. Then one more he hid up his sleeve. Next he took the stuff off the fire and with a satisfied expression poured it into the mold. Then, when he was ready, threw it into the vessel of water, at the same time bidding the priest, See what's there? Put your hand in and grope around. You'll find silver, I should think. What the devil else would it be? A silver shaving silver, isn't it? The priest plunged his hand in and fished out a bar of pure silver. And when he saw what it was, joy thrilled him through his veins, and he cried, God's blessings, and his mother's too, the blessing of all the saints upon you, Master Canon. Only vouchsafe to teach me this noble art and science, and I'll be your man as far as I am able, or their curse upon me. Said the canon, All the same, I'm going to have a second try so that you can watch closely and become an expert in it. Another time, if need be, you can try your hand without me in the practice of this ingenious science. Now, don't argue, he went on. Now take another ounce of mercury and do the same with it as with the other one that's now silver. The priest then set to work and did his best to do all that this villainous canon commanded, furiously blowing upon the coals in hope to win his heart's desire, while in the meantime the canon got ready to trick the priest again. As a blind, he carried in his hand a hollow stick. Now mark this carefully, in the end of which, as is the case of the piece of charcoal, a bare ounce of silver filings had been placed, or silver filings had been placed, while stoppered with wax to keep in every scrap of the filings. While the priest was fully occupied, the canon came up to him with his stick and sprinkled powder into the crucible as before. For his lies, God grant the devil flays him out his skin. His every thought and act was a lie, and he stirred the coals above the crucible with his loaded stick until the wax began to melt, as anybody but a blockhead knows it must. When its contents poured out and fell through into the crucible. Gentlemen, it couldn't have been bettered. When he'd been fooled again like this, the priest, who indeed suspected nothing, was overjoyed. I can't begin to describe his happiness and delight. Once more, he offered himself body and soul to the canon. Well, said the canon, poor I may be, but you'll find I know a thing or two. I warn you, there's more to come, if there's any copper here. I think so, sir, said the priest. If not, go and buy some without delay. Now off with you. Make haste. Away he went, returning with the copper. This the canon took into his hands and weighed out an ounce. My tongue is too inadequate an instrument to utter what I think of the humbuggery of this canon, father of all villainy. To those who didn't know him, he seemed a friend, and he was a fiend in heart and mind. It wearies me to tell of his knavery, nevertheless, for no other reason, truly, than to warn others, I must make it known. So now he put the ounce of copper in the crucible, and quickly set it upon the fire, which as before he made the priest blow, bending double to perform the task, and sprinkled in the powder. It was nothing but tomfoolery. He made a monkey of the priest just as he pleased. Next, he poured the melted copper into the mold, and put it in the pan of water. Then he plunged in his hand, for as I told you earlier, he had a bar of silver up his sleeve. This he deftly shook out, the damned scoundrel, and left it in the bottom of the pan. The priest knew nothing of this legerdemain. The canon fumbled about in the water, and with wonderful adroitness, palmed the bar of copper, still unperceived by the priest, and hid it. Then he took the priest by the shoulder and said, banteringly, Lord, this will never do. Bend down and help me as I helped you a moment ago. Plunge your hand in and see what's there. The priest soon fished out the bar of silver, upon which the canon said, Let's go to some goldsmith with these 3 bars we've made, and find out if they're anything. I swear they're sterling silver. If not, I'll eat my hat. Yeah, what? Hang on. Okay, anyway, people gotta decide what we're gonna have for dinner, so. But the problem is that, like, nobody can ever decide anything around here. just like one of the sucky things about like dealing with other people when it comes to eating. It's like, okay, um, one of the things that's rough is that, like, for instance, my brother, he can't eat anything spicy, so like a lot of things that have spice in it are off the table. And then another person in my house is like, it another person in the house doesn't like eat a lot of variety. It's always like the same kind of thing. So it's kind of like, okay, we either eat like one of three things, and so it's just kind of how it is. But we gotta roll through what we're gonna eat next. I really need to fix that floor. Keeps stopping the door from closing properly. Okay, anyway. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm going to read that again because I got interrupted. Where was I? Okay, so just get you sped up. I know in the midst of all that like funny talk, this is what happened. So, the canon, the alchemist, he conned the priest by basically making him think he spawned 3 little silver bars. Of course, they're probably like cheap, low-end like tin bits. It's probably like tin just coated with silver. This kind of things that like your Canadian coins are made out of. So it's just like not exactly like it's like a tin zinc alloy. That's what Canadian coins are made of, and it passes off as looking like silver. That's kind of what is being these little silver bars that the canon is giving to the priest, making him think that he made it from the other materials. So the mercury, the copper, which the copper is more valuable than like the tin zinc alloy, which as a funny bit of trivia, in Canada now, we no longer have pennies because it's too expensive to make pennies. It costs more than 1 cent to make a penny, so why bother making pennies? So the penny was discontinued. But see, like the tin zinc alloy that like the other coins are made of, at least the nickel, the dime, and the quarters are all made out of this like alloy, and then like the loonie, which is the $1 coin, has another brass element to give it that like gold looking color, and then the toonie is like a weird hybrid. Yes, we have a toonie in Canada, which is a $2 coin, and it's like a weird like it's a mix of the brass loonie coin, and then it also has like the standard tin zinc alloy. But in actuality, these things are not like overly valuable, which is why you can just mass produce coins. And so basically, the alchemist is using these like tin zinc bars to emulate a silver bar, to make the priest think that he made silver out of like less valuable materials, even though the alchemist is just conning him with like a imitation silver and getting like things like copper, and which are more valuable. And now the canon's thinking, let's go to a goldsmith and see what these things are worth. But of course these bars are not worth anything. Now, let's just, okay. They took these 3 bars to a goldsmith and had them assayed with fire and hammer. Now nobody could deny they were the real thing. Who happier than the besotted priest? No bird more glad at break of day, no summer nightingale more apt to sing, no lady readier to dance, or speaking of lords and ladies, no knight more keen to win his lady's favour with feat of arms, than that priest to learn this miserable art. And this is what he said to the canon: If I may deserve it to you, for the love of him who died for us all, how much does the formula cost? Now tell me. By Our Lady, said the canon, I give you fair warning. It's expensive. Apart from one friar and myself, there's no man in England that knows it." "No matter," cried the other. "Now, sir, for God's sake, how much? Tell me, I implore you." "Seriously," he replied, "I tell you it's pretty expensive. In one word, sir, if you wish to have it, you must pay £40. So help me God." See, okay, so this is where the con really happens. So it's like, here's these little silver bars. But how much does it cost to make these? £40. So, like, imagine if, like, someone taught you how to make, like, I don't know, or someone taught you, because remember, he didn't teach him how to do anything, really. It's like, yeah, you're going to make these little, like, metal bars. How much does it cost to make these, like, tiny metal bars? $50 per bar. And you're like, what? Like, that's crazy. So, yeah, he's just swindling in his money at this point. "It's £40, so help me God. And were it not for the friendship you showed me a while ago, you'd have paid more, that's for sure." Upon this the priest fetched the sum of £40 in nobles, and paid over the whole to the canon for the same formula. The whole business was nothing but fraud and deceit. Because remember, he didn't actually make the silver bars. The alchemist swapped the wasted material for the silver bar. So the idea is that when the priest tries it again himself to make more silver bars, he's just going to keep wasting material, and then he's just going to, like, spend all his money and get nothing. Because it would cost, let's say it actually costs £40 to get all these materials, but then he gets nothing out of it. "Sir priest," said he, "I look for no praise for my skill, but would prefer it kept dark. If you love me, keep it a secret. For did people know of my powers, by God they'd be so envious of my alchemy, it would cost me my life. No two ways about it." "Oh, God forbid!" exclaimed the priest. "You don't say! Sooner than see you in trouble, I'd go crazy and sell all I have." "Thanks for your good wishes, sir," returned the canon. "And now goodbye and 1,000 thanks." And off he went. As for the priest, he never set eyes on him again. From that day to this, and when in his own good time the priest came to try out the formula, alas, it wouldn't work. And so he was diddled and done. It was in this way the canon used to introduce himself and bring folks to ruin. Consider, gentlemen, how in every rank of life men struggle for gold till there's hardly any left. So many are taken in by alchemy that I truly believe it's the chief reason for this scarcity. Those who practice the art of transmutation speak of such cloudy terminology, none can understand it. Yeah, remember that techno-babble I was giving earlier? If indeed they have their wit nowadays, let them chatter away like jackdaws, and devote their enthusiasm and energy to polishing up their jargon, for they'll never attain their object. It's easy enough for a man to learn to transmute his property, if he has any, into nothing. TLDR, alchemy is a scam. This tomfoolery offers such glittering prizes, it will turn a man's happiness into despair. Empty the biggest and heaviest purse, and earn the curses of those who have given their goods. They should be ashamed. Can't people with burnt fingers keep away from fire? If you go in for alchemy, take my tip. Give it up lest you lose all. Late is better than never, and never to thrive too long a time. You can hunt forever, but you'll never find the philosopher's stone. You're as bold as blind Bayard, the old horse that blunders on and doesn't give a damn for danger. He'll walk into a boulder as boldly as step aside. You alchemists are the same. I tell you, if you can't see straight, take care your minds are not blinded. For though you should keep your eyes open and look never so wide awake, you'll never win anything at this trade, but squander whatever you can beg or borrow. Damp the fire lest it burn too fast. By that, I mean meddle with alchemy no more. If you do, your luck's clean out. And here and now, I'll tell you what the real alchemist says on the subject. Here is what Arnold of Villanova, I think that's how you say that, Villanova says in his Rosarium Philosophorum, and these are his very words. The mortifications or reduction of mercury cannot be accomplished without the aid of its brother. But the first to lay this down was Hermes Trismegistus, the father of alchemy. I mean, with a name like that, you gotta be the father of something crazy. Who says, the dragon will not die unless his brother is slain with him. That's to say that the dragon he meant Mercury, and the dragon's brother Brimstone. For the latter comes from Sol, which is gold, and the former from Luna, which is silver. And therefore, said he, now mark this precept. Let no man trouble himself to pursue this science, unless he can understand the aims and terminology of alchemists. Otherwise, he is a fool. For this art and science is indeed the mystery of mysteries. There was also that disciple of Plato, who once asked a question of his master, as his book Signoris Zadith Tabula Chemicia records. This is what he said. This is what he asked. Tell me the name of the philosopher's stone. And Plato said, it is the stone people call the Titan. And what is that? Said the other. The same as magnesia, replied Plato. Well, really, sir. This is ignotum, per ignotius, explaining the unknown by the more unknown. That's what that means. Pray, what is magnesia, my dear sir? Let us say it's a liquid made from the 4 elements, said Plato. Dear master, if it pleases you, tell me the essential principle of this liquid. Certainly not, answered Plato. All alchemists were bound by an oath never to disclose it to anyone or even write it in a book. For it's so dear and precious to Christ that he does not wish it to be revealed except when it pleases his Godhead to inspire men. In other words, he forbids it as he wills. That's all. So I conclude, since God in heaven does not wish alchemists to explain how this stone can be discovered, to my way of thinking, the best thing one can do is to forget it. He will surely never prosper who makes God his adversary, by working against his will. Not if he alchemizes to the end of his days. Now here I stop. My tale is ended. God send all good men a cure for sorrow. Well, that's the end of the Canon Yeoman story. Oh, that was a tough one. Oh, that was a long one. But we're almost at the end, because next Friday we will finish the Canterbury Tales finally. Why is this lighting so bad? It's finally ogre. What kind of phrasing is that? But anyway, we're going to finish the Canterbury Tales next week. Clearly. Shrek pun. It's been so long since I've seen the Shrek movies. But I've only seen like the first. I think there's more than 3. I've only seen 3 of them. If I remember, there were more, but I just never seen them. But anyway, not particularly relevant right now. Anyway, yeah, this is gonna be the end. Just some housekeeping. So next week we have a bunch of videos because we'll have our Triangle Strategy streams on Monday and Wednesday at 2 o'clock Pacific time. Next Thursday, we will have more Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones on Throwback Thursday. And then we will finish the Canterbury Tales next Friday at 3 o'clock Pacific time. So those are the streams for next week. With that said, I probably gotta bounce because apparently we gotta deal with this thing now. So that means this is gonna be the end of the stream. You guys enjoyed more Canterbury Tales, and I will see you guys on Monday for more Triangle Strategy. Until then, I hope you guys have a great Friday night. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I'll see you guys Monday. God bless you, and good night.